Hey, welcome to Kate's Crafts. I'm Kate. Have you ever been curious about one-layered stamping or stamp masking? Perhaps you've already tried this method. I'd love to know in the comments below. In today's video, I will be trying out this technique and building a fun scene using various lawn fawn stamps. Let's get started. Here I'm going to stamp out Happy Birthday in some extreme black ink by My Favorite Things. It's a Copic friendly ink, and I'll be Copic coloring later. Now I'm going to stamp that Happy Birthday on top of the purple tape, and I'm going to fussy cut that around to create my mask. Now I'm going to build my scene with all the various lawn fawn cats that I like. And once I'm happy with that, I will remove everything that I want to be in the background out, and I will be stamping first what I want to be in the front. So once I'm happy with that, I close the door, pull it back, and I'm using the black ink again. I do this a couple of times to get it nice and crisp, and now I'm going to take the purple tape again and cut out some more masks. I'm using this particular tape because it's a low tack tape and I have lots of it. It's not my particularly favorite tape. I only get one, maybe two uses out of it, so I find it a little wasteful, but for something like this, just to try out, I'm not wasting any of my good tape. I kind of cut this one off a little bit. I noticed it as I was lining it up, and I wasn't sure if my stamps were going to be going back that far. So I'm going to take a little bit here and I'm going to cut off a piece so I could line that up over top of the space that I've missed. I found that the best way to cut these out was to cut along the black lines. Not so much in the black lines or outside of the black lines, because I didn't want to create any white borders around them like you would if you were to die cut this out of some sticky paper. Once I've got all those masks down, I'm going to lay down my next set of stamps. And I'm going to stamp those out a couple of times to do the same process over again. Found it kind of neat to try this technique out as I'd never done it before. And seeing it come together one layer at a time, I found it kind of interesting. So here again, I'm going to stamp out the bit that I need to cut to add into my last cat. And I don't need the whole cat cut out, just the front part. You'll see here in a sec. I want this guy's tail in behind that cat, so I needed to mask off his face. So I'm going to stamp that out nice and neat. Do that a couple of times, and there you go. So to add a little bit around the cats to give it more interest, I've chosen a couple of small little bits like the mouse and the poof above the cat's head and the ball of yarn and, you know, a couple of little paw prints. I just think those paw prints are really cute. Of course, the little Z pattern above the sleepy cat. So once I've got that done, I can peel and reveal, and I tell you, this is probably my favoriteest part of the whole process, was just to see all the work coming together. I think it all looks so cute. Next I'm going to do my Copic coloring. I'll leave the numbers of the markers that I'm going to use at the top of the screen every time I change the markers. If you want to fast forward through this part, I won't be upset. It gets a little boring after a while. Unless you're interested in coloring, which I could color till the cows come home. I think it's one of my favorite pastimes. Sometimes I just stamp out images to color just for giggles and something to do. It was kind of fun trying to figure out what cats I wanted to look like what. I first started off with a calico cat. I'd had one in my early 20s. Her name was Shaw, and she liked to stare at you and knock stuff off tables. It was quite humorous until it was like a half-full glass of water or something. She would just look at you with such contempt knock it over, and then when you'd get mad, she'd kind of look at you smugly like, what? Here I'm using some warm grays that I thought would look kind of neat for a warm gray cat. I'm using like the dark tones and the light tones, and going back and forth and just kind of blending them in circular motions just to kind of get some shadow and depth. I try to aim for more of the shadows where the cats are overlapping a little bit to kind of give it more of a dimension. I think my favorite out of the grays have got to be the C's. I only have one neutral, and I haven't tried the toners yet, but I do like these cool grays for doing the little stripy patterns on the cats. So here's that C7. I had to take the cap off of it because I don't know if it's just over full, but when I leave one of the caps on, I find that the pen leaks a little bit. I don't know, maybe you've had this problem with your markers too? Let me know in the comments below. I'm still kind of learning about Copics, and I'm really enjoying them. I think they're probably my favorite medium to color with so far. Here I'm just kind of blending them out with each of the colors, making sure that there's no stark lines with those grays with the stripy patterns, kind of like how a cat would have them. And then this last one, I'm just kind of blending everything in. I really like how these markers blend together. I've never really experienced anything quite like them, other than like paint maybe, but I haven't painted in years. I used to enjoy acrylic paints, but now I'm going in with some E's. I've got quite a few E markers, which are really fun to try to figure out which ones go with which. These ones are more of the reddish tone E's, which are more newer in my collection than with what I started. Here I'm going in with my mid-tone, trying to blend out that dark tone a bit. You get the point. It's the same process I use for all my Copic coloring. I go from dark to light, and sometimes I go back in, from light to dark kind of thing, just to blend everything out and smooth it all out a little bit better. Others do it different. Sometimes people like to lay out their light colors first, kind of get an idea of where everything is, and then they go in with their darks, and then they go back to light. I guess it's all of a preference as to how you want to color. This one was a lot of fun to do. I thought this would be neat to do like little tiger stripes, like almost like Garfield, but without the black to it. It was kind of an experiment, if you will. The E19 was kind of nice and dark with a little bit of reddish orange tinge to it, and then I go in with some YRs, which are an orange yellow, or no, yellow red, sorry. And those were a lot of fun to figure out. I did switch out one of them here. I forget which one that one is. It might be I'm not sure. It's hard to read the screen sometimes, and I didn't write all this down. I probably should have, but I don't know. I was excited to color, so I didn't bother writing half of this stuff down. So here I'm just blending in all that dark color with that orange marker, and then going back in. See here, I switch it out a little bit. So that's probably going to be my YR4, which is a very light orangey red. And I found that that one worked quite well as to blending all that together, and it wasn't too dark. Here I've got some more of the E colors. They're like a darker brown, not really as red like the other ones are. They were interesting to try and blend out because they're so dark. And that's the thing I find with stamping, is that when you're using dark markers, you got to be careful and use them sparingly, because you end up just kind of coloring in the whole thing too dark, and you can't make out any of the faces. And this technique that I'm using, I'm touching my light marker to my dark marker to kind of get a little transition color there in the middle, because I don't have the next marker down or up from these colors to properly blend them out. So this is one of those techniques that I picked up watching all the card making and coloring videos. So if you don't have that transition color, you could always try this technique out, or just try it out for experimental sake. Here I'm using that E15 and the E23. I don't quite understand how Copic maps out the numbers and letters for its colors. You get into some colors and you'd think the gradient would go from 1 to 99, but no, it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe it goes in blocks of 10. Perhaps you know, and you can let me know in the comments below, because this is still kind of a mystery to me. I don't quite understand it. This last one here I'm doing with the black marker is what I was talking about earlier. You don't want to oversaturate it with the dark color, because you risk losing any kind of detail in the stamp that you're using. So I'm trying to be very sparingly with that black. I'm just using it lightly for the shadows around the cat where I want it to be dark. I want to give the impression that this is a black cat without going too dark. And I probably should have took the cap off of that C7, because I'm touching the paper, as you can see, and it's a little overly juicy. I find that it's almost like it equalizes the pressure, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but it kept it from dripping all over the place like it had on a previous coloring that I had done a few days ago. I was quite upset about it. But here I am trying to blend that out with a middle gray that I have in the C. That's a C5. So you still get the idea that it's black. Well, it looks gray, but I'm trying to give the impression that it's black. So I gave it a cute little black nose. So here I thought I'd go in with some C1 to kind of give that mouse a little bit of gray. And I went in with another one. I'm not sure what one that was, but then I thought I'd add just a little bit of color, and I thought, you know, a light purple might look nice with those grays, oranges, and browns. So I've got a couple of different violet colors here. I'm, you know, of course, doing the dark tone, and then I'll go into the mid-tone and then the light tone and get it all blended out. I don't really use any other colors here, just the purple to kind of tie it all in together. I plan on putting a purple layer in behind this out of some pattern paper, which you'll see soon. So I don't know, I really enjoyed trying out this technique, and I think I'd probably try and do this again. Maybe a little more complicated next time. Build a whole scene would be kind of fun with more than just cats. Do a whole circus this way. Wouldn't that be funny? So yeah, I'm not sure exactly who this card is going to go to. I might just keep it in my stash for the just in case. Eventually I'd like to do more of these happy birthday cards and just build up, you know, for the rest of the year. This is my favorite things. I think it's a Wonky stitch die. I'm just making sure that that die cuts around the cats and not into the cats too much, as my scene wasn't exactly measured out quite well. That was one of the steps I probably should have took into consideration here. But I don't know, I think this little frame bit really makes it come together. I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. Here I'm going in with a blender marker. It's a 0. There's no color in it. I guess it's called the colorless blender. You can help lighten out your colors, or if you do it right, you can push colors back in that kind of came out of the lines. Sometimes I can get a little overexcited, and I am a little bit of a messy colorer. I couldn't quite fix that orange around the cat, so I thought I'd give it a bit of a gray shadow, you know, maybe give it a little depth of it being on the ground of something. So I go in here with the C1, going around the cats. And then I'm not sure quite if that's enough, so I decide to color even further down. And make a little mound, why not? This is why I like stamping in that My Favorite Things Extreme Black, because I never have any bleeding with it when I go over it with these markers. I believe it's a hybrid ink, or hybrid, or however you pronounce that word. It's one of the first inks I started off with. I have a regular dye-based ink, but I don't really use it as much because I never really know if I'm going to be using my markers or not. I kind of don't really put much thought into planning certain things out. I just kind of wing it. I find that my creative flow is better that way. Plus, you know, I kind of learn with trial and error. Sometimes it takes me a little bit longer, but I eventually get there. So to add a little bit more shadow to these cats, I'm going in with a little bit of a darker gray. You know, just touching here and there to kind of, you know, make it look like the more individual impressions of shadows underneath these cats. And then I'm just kind of blending them out so those darker lines aren't too stark. And here's that purple background border I've got. I'm taking some double-sided tape and I'm going around the outer edge of it. I didn't really think this one through, so I kind of just went with what was closest to me and grab it. In hindsight, I kind of wish I would have used foam tape on this part, but you'll see in a minute. I'm using some glue here on the double-sided tape, just in case I don't get that mounting quite right. Sometimes it's slightly askew and, you know, you get that perfectionist bug and you got to take it apart and you end up ripping it or something. So try to be better safe than sorry. I like to stand above these things to kind of get a better eye with the corners. And then once I'm happy with it, I give it a nice good press. So here you go in slow motion. I've paused the video so you could take a look at my handiwork. So I thought I'd take care of the inside. I used some of the excess pieces of the pattern paper that I used on the front to tie it into the inside and, you know, make it all matchy-matchy. So I picked out a sentiment and the little birthday hat and the tiny little cat that I had in one of my lawn fawn stamps. I'm going to use my T-ruler to make sure that that's relatively straight and not too wonky. And these little reverse tweezers are quite handy. I like having these on my desk for little things my fat fingers can't handle. So because the black is on my desk, it's always on my desk, I'm using that MFT Extreme Black in the inside of the card to create my little sentiment that says Meow. I think it's so cute. And here's where I said that I wish I would have used foam tape on that first layer. I kind of got a little backwards with it, but said, oh well, I'll run with it. So I'm putting a little glue on this also in case I muck it up. And I saw this technique on a video somewhere where they use the corner of their stamping positioner without the sponge to line up their card to get a perfect lineup every time. So far it's worked, but it also shows me that I don't necessarily cut my cards properly when I'm mass producing the card bases on my off days. So no worries though, I try to trim it up as best that I can. Eventually I'm going to need a new pair of scissors because those ones aren't the greatest. So next I am going to take a white gel pen and I'm going to add little dots and lines and go around the cats to kind of give them a little more dimension. Again, it's all about a dimension in these things, and I don't know, I just kind of think it makes it look that much more cuter. So I've gone ahead and fast forward to the last little bit here so you didn't have to witness the whole thing like you did with the coloring. Or if you fast forward it, you don't have to witness all the pen coloring. And here I've got this thing called a Wonky Stella. It's almost like a water brush I don't know exactly what they're called, but it's got a bunch of glitter in it, like fine glitter, like a dusting, like a fairy dust. And you just paint it on in the places that you want. I find there's a little bit of a difference between that and, like, say, one of the Stardust pens in the video that I reviewed last. It's a different type of shimmer. Perhaps I'll do a quick video on testing the two of those out. And I thought these hearts would be really cute. I've got a whole bunch of these little purple hearts that I never know what to do with, so I've got my little jewel picker and some clear glue and picking them up and dabbing them down and booping them around, as some would say. And there you have it. If you enjoyed today's content or found it helpful, please give it a like. I also welcome you to subscribe and turn on notifications because I think I rather enjoy making these videos. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Take care.